The classic GM nightmare is to spend 10 hours working out some really cool encounter. You know, the crystal spider's lair. And your players just walk right by. Even though there are villagers disappearing, even though the ruling baron asks the players to help out, and there are rumors of some great treasure. No, they're not interested. They got something else they'd rather do. And once you've done all that background work, fitting it into a specific area, it can be tough to just plug this in somewhere else. The players are like, what? There are villagers disappearing again and the local baron wants us to help? But I'm going to show you how to reverse engineer your storylines so that they incorporate the desires and goals of your players without sacrificing the integrity of your world, the NPCs, their goals and desires. And if you do this carefully, you'll find that your players will become highly motivated to explore the various encounters that you've put all this time and effort into. Hello again, I'm KR King, and this is my YouTube channel dedicated to helping you homebrew your own campaign. So, what is reverse engineering and how does it relate to storytelling? So in its practical application, reverse engineering is taking something that's complete and breaking it down into its constituent parts so that you could reassemble and build one of these yourself. So in wartime is the classic example of reverse engineering where one side would find some item, weapon, or whatever of another and re-engineer it. So for example, the American bazooka in World War II, the Germans found this, they reverse engineered it and mass produced their own weapon called the Panzerschreck. Now in storytelling, reverse engineering isn't so nefarious, and there are two types that are really critical to creating encounters and scenarios in a role-playing game like Dungeons & Dragons. Now the first is where you start with an ending and work your way backwards. The classic example is a murder mystery. You know, we have a corpse in a room, this person was killed, and when you're writing this, you start with this murder, then you go backwards in terms of, well, how were they killed and who would kill them, who would have a motive and why did they do it? And it all has to connect such that this is where we end up, the corpse is in the room and the protagonist/players are there. And in the last episode, I talked about methods that detectives use to investigate crimes or people and how you would use them as a GM to investigate/create the details of your world. The other type of reverse engineering in terms of storytelling is retroactive continuity. When you have events that occurred earlier in a series of novels or stories, has to be changed to reflect things that are occurring on the ground in the current series of novels or films. A very famous example of this is where Tolkien had to reverse engineer the powers of the ring that had been in the Hobbit from its just a harmless little ring of invisibility in a children's book into this artifact of absolute evil in the trilogy of adult novels. And Tolkien did this with two forms of retroactive continuity: alteration and addition. As he was developing the Ring of Power and Sauron and everything, he realized that he was going to have to alter some of the facts and situations where the ring was introduced in The Hobbit. In the original, Gollum bets his ring in the riddle contest, and then when he loses to Bilbo, they part very amicably. He's not that upset to have lost his ring. But once it became the Ring of Power, Tolkien had to go back and change things. Bilbo steals the ring, and when Gollum realizes that it's been stolen, he reacts very angrily and searches out and says bad Baggins and that sort of thing. And also Tolkien uses retroactive addition in the way he changes Gollum's character, because he's created a backstory, not just for the ring, how Sauron created it and Isildur lost it, and then Gollum, Smeagol, finds it and kills his brother to get the ring. So he has this connection to the ring, but he's also become this sort of nasty, horrible creature. So as a GM, you're going to reverse engineer your storylines so that they reflect what the players encounter in that moment when they're there in the game. And you're going to use the retroactive continuity to alter or make additions to encounters that you've created to reflect, one, who the players are, what their interests are, but also, where we are in terms of the storyline. So on my sample continent of Melanor, I've got this lost civilization that's slowly going to be uncovered as the players advance through the game. And one of the things I'm going to stress is I'm not really sure about all the powers and capabilities of this lost civilization because I'm trying to keep it simple. I'm just having some basic facts, a basic idea of who these people were, But then as the players move through, depending on where they go and what they're interested in, I'm going to reveal these and think about them that reflect this continuity in terms of the players. So in the last episode, I used the classic tavern meetup as an example of the detective's method to gather information to present to your clients, the players, right? But I also did some reverse engineering. I took a map that I found on the internet and I altered it slightly to reflect Zodi, the tavern keep, this starting NPC that the players meet in, and his activities, right? So in the basement, I put a secret door with a tunnel out to the wharf. And the idea here was that Zodi is a smuggler, and so this would be something that would be reflected in the architecture of his tavern. And I then populated it with Zodi, his staff, and then some of his regulars, people that would reflect what he does and everything, but also the player characters, activities that they're involved with, whatever, depending on their characters. And that can affect things when the players come to meet Eleanor, this elven monk who's asked them for help. Eleanor is going to be the conduit with the players for this ancient civilization, its secrets. But why did I pick her? Well, I reversed engineered it. So the choice was based on a group that I'm running with currently online. 5 characters. We have an elven cleric of the Tempest domain. We also have an elven ranger, half-elf bard, a dragonborn fighter, and a human wizard. So we have 3 people of the elven race in this group. But if I've got 3 characters out of 5 that are elves, I'm reverse engineering this based on the party composition for this endpoint in time, the meeting in the tavern. I'm going to have 1 or 2 of the characters have some kind of connection here. The elf makes sense for that. But this connection shouldn't be too close, and this is something you have to be careful with here. You want to incorporate the players into the storyline with reverse engineering and retroactive continuity, but not to make it ridiculous. You want to maintain the verisimilitude of your world, the realism of how the people are interacting and the events that are occurring. And if you do it too obviously, it doesn't work. So in the origin story for my sample continent of Melanor, when it was discovered, it was assumed to be the ancestral home of the elves because all the legends of the elves said they'd come over from the west, from this lost continent, and there it was. And it was called Melanor, which is Elvish for home. But in fact, in the 200 years since people have been there, no sign of the elves has been found. There were none there. There was no evidence of any, ruins or, writings or tablet, anything that would say that elves had been there. However, the elves continue to search for this, and many go off into the wilderness trying to find some sign that the elves were there and what happened to them. So now I have 3 elves in this party, so they're going to have some connection to this search for the elves. Even if there's a certain group of elves that say, well, we haven't found anything, it looks like they weren't there, they're going to know people that believe this or people that made this their life's goal. They go out into the wilderness and establish settlements, and they search high and low for any signs of this. So when I had my encounter, my first sort of thing the players are going to meet just a little bit of the ancient magic, I designed it for 2nd or 3rd level, and I was calling it the Hills of Whispers, right? It was going to be this sort of rocky promontory out near a village where they were hearing these whispers at night. So I was going to have a villager disappear in these hills. His daughter comes out. The players are either going by on this caravan or stopping at this shrine halfway through and asking for their help. But I can easily change it from the Hills of Whispers to the Glade of Whispers, right? And I'm going to put it near one of these elven settlements that's out there searching for evidence that the elves were once there. And the daughter is going to come back to Dramos, and she's going to contact the players. Why? Because the elders of her village, even though her father disappeared, are sort of tamping down on the investigation. They know something. They're telling her that maybe this guy was a rebel. They didn't trust him. Maybe there's a split in here in the community, because this can occur in any kind of community. So she goes to Dramos for help. And I have Brenna, this elven monk that has this monk temple, and she's a champion of the poor. And when she hears this story, there's going to be some elements that will link it to the player characters. We have this elven cleric who's a Tempest domain, and he also is interested in legends of these evil elves that somehow, whether it's in the Underdark or something, he's very interested in this. So this is a connection that I have. When Eleanor comes, she talks to Brenna. She said, I feel like the Glade of Whispers, there's some evil here and no one will listen to me, but I suspect that the player character will. I'm also going to connect it to music. I'm going to say that in addition to the whispers that are heard at night, on certain phases of the full moon, strange music is heard, almost hypnotic. And this may have a connection with the bard the College of Lore. He's interested in, investigating this sort of thing. So you got two people with a connection, but it's not like they're related to the person that disappeared, or it's where they grew up. They don't have the mark of the one elf on them or something like that. It's a connection that they should be interested in. They will be. So I re-engineered things to reflect the party composition. I got 3 elves in the group. I took the original encounter and just changed it around from hills to glades and connected it to the elven story of this continent. So I hope this was helpful to you. I love to hear comments. Please subscribe if you like my channel. But in the meantime, keep playing D&D and tell somebody else about it.